Do you believe in time travel? I do. In the words of the Beatles, when I was younger, so much younger than today, my wife Ricky and I traveled through Europe. This was before smartphones, before everything was documented and posted instantly. It was a different world, slower, quieter, more present. We loved everything about it. Eating crepes under the Eiffel Tower, wandering through the Colosseum, sunbathing on a Corfu beach. But what we loved most was the people. Wherever we went, we'd stop at those tiny souvenir cafes, chat to the locals, and buy a postcard. We'd send these home addressed to ourselves, capturing a special moment on each. One postcard from Italy went missing, completely disappeared, and we forgot all about it. Then, more than a year later, it arrived in our mailbox as if it had traveled through time to find us. We excitedly celebrated its arrival. And here's the thing, it felt exactly like a message from our younger selves, a message from the past. Earlier this week, I sent a postcard to myself again, figuratively, because I don't think it's even possible to send a postcard in South Africa these days. This time, though, I sent it the other way around, from the present to the past. Welcome back to Down the Line, the podcast that helps humans and organizations consider what beautiful tomorrows could look like. My name is Mich, and I'm a futurist. Not the crazy time traveler type, but a bridge builder to real, tangible futures. To tell you the story of the postcard, we need to go back almost exactly 10 years. It was early, the 1st January 2016. We were on holiday in Transkei, one of the most beautiful, untouched places in South Africa. Everyone else in the house was still asleep. I'd slept maybe 2 hours. Marcel, my youngest, was deep in the terrible twos and he woke up screaming before the sun, ready to wake up the entire house. So I strapped him into his backpack and walked out into the cool morning air and onto the beach. As the rough sand scrunched between my toes, I realized that my footprints were the first on the beach for that year. The ocean simmered silver, and the sky was a deep grey blue. The air smelled of salt and dark soil and the wildness of Pondoland. It was absolutely breathtaking. Later that day, I opened a notebook and sketched the scaffolding of a new life. Not a new year, new me fantasy, just a different trajectory. You know what I managed to change that year? Absolutely nothing. None of my January 1st plans came to fruition. What a failure! Yet, that sunrise in the Transkei became a serious personal fault line, a moment before and after. Let's get back to what I really want to talk about today. The question I want to consider is this. Do New Year's resolutions still have a place in a fast-changing world? A world shaped by instant gratification, declining health, and a rapidly shifting work and tech landscape. And can futures thinking help us design and follow through on better resolutions that actually lead to happier, healthier humans? Today's episode is not about New Year's resolutions in the traditional sense. It's about future making. It's about why we hope, why we fail, and how we could design futures that don't collapse by mid-January. It's about sending postcards through time and receiving them. Let's step back for a moment. New Year's resolutions are not a modern invention. Humans have been trying to reset, restart, and redesign themselves for about 4,000 years. The earliest recorded resolutions came from ancient Babylon. At the start of each new year, which for them was in March, people made promises to the gods: pay your debts, return borrowed tools, live with integrity. It was less about becoming a better person and more about keeping the world in balance. Fast forward to the Romans. Julius Caesar declares January 1st as the start of the new year, named after Janus, the god with two faces, one looking back, one looking forward. And New Year's became a moment where past and future touch. People made commitments to Janus, asking for favor and renewal, a spiritual resolution, but also a civic one, a commitment to a better public life. We jump ahead again 1,000 years. Early Christians embraced the idea, but shifted it slightly. The new year became a time for reflection, repentance, and moral recommitment. Instead of, I want to lose weight, it was more like, I will live with humility. I will reject bad habits. I will be generous. It was still about the self, but the focus was spiritual character, not self-optimization. Jump ahead again, and the phrase appears in newspapers around 1830. And the story? People breaking their resolutions by February. Which brings me to the first phrase of the episode, Quitter's Day. You have to love it. Quitter's Day. Statistically, the second Friday in January is when most people give up on their New Year's resolutions, clearly visible in the dropout rates in gyms and on fitness apps. Back to the timeline. By the 80s and 90s, the self-help movement exploded. Gyms, diet culture, productivity books. Suddenly, New Year wasn't just symbolic, it became commercial. And resolutions became a kind of personal performance. This year, I'll reinvent my entire life. We move on. Over the past 20 years, smartphones, apps, and wearables have turned resolutions into something we can track in real time, from step counters and budgeting apps to digital habit trackers and online study groups. People now join virtual communities or challenges for support, something that simply didn't exist before the 2010s. At the same time, tech has created new categories of resolutions, reducing screen time, limiting social media, digital detoxes, deleting apps, goals no one thought about before the iPhone era. In the last few years, social media turned January into a collective performance of self-renewal, with posts and hashtags acting as accountability tools, and sometimes as pressure. A 2024 report showed that over 60% of people feel socially obligated to make resolutions. And of course, failure has become a meme, almost an expected part of the cycle. We zoom out again. What seems to be happening is this. People reflect on the year that's been during December. Based on what didn't work, they set goals for the new year. Resolutions often center around health, career, and relationships. Goals are often unrealistic. Lose 10 kgs by March. Master the guitar. Stop smoking immediately. You know the story. In a world shaped by instant gratification, we expect immediate results. More than half of people give up by the end of January. Only 8% still stand by year end. The visible narrative becomes, we're bad at discipline. Resolutions don't work. Why even bother? If we scratch a little deeper, other explanations emerge. 1. Life is full. People aren't failing in a vacuum. January enthusiasm hits real life by week 2. School runs, deadlines, load shedding, emails, sick kids, bad sleep, money stress. The intention is there, but the system we live in is not designed for slow, careful change. It's designed for speed and survival. And this is where my second phrase of the episode comes in. Futures thieves. What a concept. Futures thieves. Future thieves are the forces that steal our capacity to shape better futures. Endless notifications, toxic work cultures, poor leadership, the pressure to always be on. A society that rewards urgency over depth. So what could be happening is not that people are weak, but that we allow our futures to be stolen in small pieces, attention, energy, time, until there's nothing left for the resolution. Some questions. Are we setting resolutions based on the rear view mirror? Last year, I didn't exercise enough, so this year I'll go to gym 5 times a week. Last year was tight, so this year I'll save more money. All valid, but very few people pause and ask, what kind of world am I moving into? What skills, habits, and capacities could I need for that? Could we be using the wrong time horizon? Is it possible that we overestimate what we can change in a single year? The total body transformation, full career pivot, complete personality rewrite. But we massively underestimate what's possible in a decade. 10 years of learning, 10 years of small, consistent health habits, 10 years of better conversations and better boundaries. That's where foresight comes in. Futures thinking pulls us out of the 12-month hype cycle and asks what can be achieved by 2035. Let's go broader. Health is a mega concern. Despite it being the #1 resolution, physical and mental health is statistically declining. Career goals are high, but AI automation and new skills demands means the world of work is evolving faster than people. A 1-year resolution doesn't stand a chance unless we are learning continuously. Tech is both the ally and the enemy. We use tech for tracking habits, but it also erodes attention, disrupts sleep, shortens patience. This tension is one of the biggest drivers of failed resolutions. Finance is tightening. Inflation could be cooling, but the cost of living isn't. Debt levels are high. Salaries aren't keeping pace. And economic volatility means people are trying to set financial resolutions in a suboptimal environment. And then we haven't even spoken about geopolitics, demographics, or the effects of climate change. But when you stack these forces together, you realize something. Moving forward, we might not fail at resolutions because of weak discipline. We could fail because we're trying to create stability inside a structurally unstable environment. The system of life in 2026 will likely be more demanding than the human operating model was designed for. And this is where futures thinking becomes really powerful. When the world becomes complex, fast, uncertain, and convergent, the people who thrive are those who lift their time horizons, zoom out, redesign their habits, and anchor themselves to a future they actually believe in. Let's go futuring. By now, we know that 1. The world needs hope. The problems we face are more complex than ever. 2. Humans are optimistic by nature. People believe the future will be better than the past. 3. Our resolutions are sound. Better health, better finances, better work experiences, better relationships. 4. Tech can be our friend. Wearables, apps, AI, ecosystems that support the cause. 5. We're in it together. We share so many of the same goals. Why not share the stoke? Now, here's one example of how we could create better futures. Design thinking. Design thinking is a problem-solving approach built around understanding humans, experimenting and iterating your way towards better solutions. The objective is to set better resolutions that actually create the change we want. How do we do this? Step 1, empathize. Start with your real life. Give yourself permission to put yourselves in your own shoes. Look back and identify the things that stole your energy, focus, and purpose. Consider things like your real schedule, your energy levels, your responsibilities, your limits, your stressors. But also think about the things, people, and environments that gave you energy and allowed you to thrive. Step 2, define or frame the right problem. Here you can start thinking about how you would want your life to look 5 to 10 years down the line and identify the things that are preventing you in the present to get there. Based on your understandings, make sure that you ask the right questions. Instead of saying, I need to lose 10 kilos, I need to earn more money, or I need to stop scrolling, ask, what is the deeper problem I'm trying to solve? Your framing might change to, I want more energy so I can engage better at work and get my attention back, which will lead me to be more successful. Once the problem is clear, the solution becomes more honest and achievable. Step 3, ideate. Instead of choosing one dream path, brainstorm many ways to improve. Things like 10-minute habits, environmental tweaks, tech tools, social accountability, or morning rituals. Write them all down. You're not committing, you're exploring. This opens the space for creativity and prevents the all or nothing trap of something like run 5 kilos every day. Step 4, prototype. Prototyping means choosing and refining some of the ideas you came up with. Examples, a 10-minute daily walk for 2 weeks, a 30-minute Sunday planning ritual for a month, block 20 minutes of learning 3 times a week for a month, replace one screen habit with one presence habit for 2 weeks. And then, step 5, test. Testing means trying out the prototypes for a set period of time and then asking, did the experiment fit your life? Did it help you feel better? What got in the way? How can you redesign the environment to make repeat success easier? Every obstacle becomes data, not a reason to quit. And then you repeat. Based on what you've learned, you go back to step 1 and you follow the process again. This is where futures thinking overlaps beautifully. You're shaping the future through iteration, not willpower. Design thinking transforms resolutions from rigid declarations into flexible systems you can improve over time. Exactly how humans succeed. Let's get back to the first postcard, the one I sent to myself of 10 years ago. Here's what I wrote. Dear me, you couldn't have known it back then, but that tired morning in Transkei, carrying Marcel on your back with only 2 hours of sleep, was the moment you began redesigning your life. You didn't overhaul everything at once, not even close. You ran small experiments. You tested what steadied you, what energized you, what mattered. Yoga worked, so you kept it. Better habits worked, and your health shifted slowly but significantly. You prototyped life without medication, and it held. You invested time into your family and the connection deepened. You redesigned your work, your studies, your routines. And through every disruption, you adjusted, learned, and refined, supported by people who helped you stay the course. You didn't change through willpower. You changed through design. You've done amazing things, and the journey is just getting started. Love, Mich. Now your turn. Imagine the future you want in 2035. Not the fantasy, the possible future. The grounded, achievable, deeply meaningful one. Write a postcard to yourself, dated 10 years from now. In it, describe in detail what your life looks like, how you feel. Write it as if you are there in that time. What does it feel like, look like, taste like? Where are you? Who are you with? The more detailed, the better. Put it in your wallet, or your journal, or your notes app. And that becomes your compass. Then go design your life one step and one prototype at a time. Some takeaways. For leaders, managers, and executives. People don't leave their hopes, dreams, and aspirations at home when they come to work. Start with humanity, connect with people, understand what is important to them, understand how you can realistically support them. Your job is not to motivate people, it's to create the conditions where motivation can thrive. Model sustainable habits yourself. Leaders who sleep, move, rest, learn, and protect focus time give their teams permission to do the same. Create a learning-friendly team culture. Share what you're learning. Encourage skill development. Give people space to grow into the future of work. Protect people's attention. Less noise, more clarity, cleaner priorities. Attention is the new productivity. Don't become a future Steve. For organizations, use strategic foresight to see what's ahead. Build it into the culture. That means understanding what's coming, preparing for it early, and creating environments where humans feel safe enough to grow. Turn those insights into shared plans. Communicate what you see. Invite teams into the conversation. When people co-create the future with leadership, uncertainty becomes possibility instead of anxiety. Build safe spaces for humans to thrive. Psychological safety, clear priorities, healthy rhythms. People can't grow in chaos. They grow in environments designed with intention. Prototype new ways of working. Run small experiments, new schedules, new workflows, new learning rhythms. Don't announce big changes. Test them. Learn. Iterate. Create personalized growth pathways. Help employees design their own future-aligned development plans. Support the habits and aspirations that matter to them, especially where they align with organizational goals. When people grow in ways that also grows the organization, everyone wins. In Africa, a staggering 86% of people set New Year's resolutions. It speaks to the hope of our people. Harness it, and the possibilities are endless. So, do I believe in time travel? Yes, but not in the flash of light arrive amongst dinosaurs type. I believe I can have conversations with myself of 10 years ago, understand my dreams, the stumbling blocks, and learn from what worked and what didn't. And I believe that based on what I do today, I can send myself into the future, but a better me, healthier, more engaged, motivated, happy. Resolutions aren't about January. They're about direction, identity, possibility, and the futures we choose consciously. Maybe this year, don't set a resolution, set a future. Happy 2026 and beyond.